I'm here today not to talk on and on about SaltWise, but to give Tony from the City of De Pere a chance to share a bit about what is working and maybe some challenges that they've been overcoming in De Pere, right by Green Bay in northeastern Wisconsin. So I'll be turning it over to Tony in just a second. He's going to share with you some slides, and then we'll have some time at the end for some questions. So if you do have any questions or comments, please, you can type those right into the YouTube chat. And if that isn't working for you for whatever reason, feel free to email me at wisaltwise@gmail.com. And then I'll be able to ask Tony those questions at the end of the presentation today. So thanks again for joining. Remember, this is all archived on our SaltWise YouTube channel, so you can always come back to this or share this out with others. But with that, I'll turn it over to Tony.
Thanks, Allison. Let me try and go back to my screen here. And so I just wanted to go through a little bit on what the City of De Pere does for our snowplow operations and how we coordinate with other departments or other subsections within our Public Works Department and utilize and work with other departments such as our police and fire as we go through a snowplow operation. A lot of what we do may be very similar to everybody else. Some things may be behind what others do, or maybe even ahead of some other places. So hopefully we can have dialogue after to discuss some of the items that may be better or worse and ways that we can all advance both snowplowing operations, fuel and efficiency because of fuel costs being so high, but also the salt and the environment and economic impacts. This here's a picture of the City of De Pere's bridge focused on St. Norbert College. We do usually have a little more traffic than this, so I'm not really sure where all the cars are, but kind of an overview of the west side of De Pere and our main bridge. This main bridge is the one corridor across the Fox River south of the 172 bridge. So it is very heavily utilized, even though it doesn't look like it. But with that, that is the connecting to the east and west side rescue squad and emergency response aspect. So that bridge has a very high level of service, but it is such a neat picture. I want to share it. The City of De Pere is approximately 25,000 people. We're in Brown County in northeast Wisconsin, about 5 miles south of Green Bay, 20 miles north of Appleton, and we are along the Interstate 41 corridor. We have, ironically, an east and west De Pere. It's all the City of De Pere, but the river really divides the city, and especially those that have lived here a long time, there is quite a rivalry amongst east and west De Pere. We have approximately 125 center lane miles of street, 2 separate school districts. For a city this size, that's not very common. We have an East school district and West De Pere school district, 2 high schools and 1 university. Our street department consists of 12 individuals. We have a lead person and then 11 operators that are responsible for all quality of life aspects of the public works operations. Everything from snow and ice. We do our own garbage and recycling, street sweeping, sewer cleaning, and televising, sign fab and installation, weed cutting, leaf and brush collection, and again, all other duties as assigned. So our 12 individuals are very talented and specialized in certain areas, but also it doesn't matter if an individual's been here for 30 years, they may end up on a garbage or recycling truck as the need warrants. Seniority is not an issue here. Obviously, we're not in a union mentality anymore, so everybody accepts the responsibility of what their task is for the day, and they move on, do the job to the best of their ability, and tomorrow's a new day. A little bit of our arsenal of what we have. Now, a lot of communities may have a lot more streets and a lot more equipment, but what we have is 5 single axle plow trucks and spreaders. We have pre-wet systems on that. They're tailgate spreaders. The 5-yard trucks work great plowing, especially in our residential neighborhoods. They are very mobile. I'm sorry, mobility-wise, as far as turning around cul-de-sacs, pulling corners, things like that. It's the best of both worlds for us. I mean, the operators really like them, and we're able to both plow with plow and wing and apply salt pre-wetted at the spinner. We have 1 liquid tank that you see here. That's a 1,000-gallon tank that's on one of our smaller 5-yard trucks that we use for anti-icing. We do have a tandem truck with an e-poke that we do use for anti-icing as well. 2 tandem plow trucks, 3 loaders with wings, 1 grader with wing, 2 tool cats. One of the things that we do in our municipality is not only do we do primary streets, residential streets and alleys, we also do our city owned and maintained parking lots. So whether it's city hall or main parking lots, our public works department, street department plows those as well. We do utilize primarily our John Deere tractor with the pusher as well as tool cats to help push parking lots. We do use our tool cat with a blower that does most of our alleys. That way we're able to, alleys here in the city are relatively tight. We can utilize one of our 1 tons with a front blade, but we utilize the blower a lot to try and minimize the windrows that narrow up the alley. So we're able to shoot ahead, and as we get past the garage or whatnot, we can kind of adjust the chute to kind of push it back a little bit farther to keep the alleys open. We do have 1 brine extreme maker. We have 2 6,000 gallon brine holding tanks, and then 1 6,000 gallon tank that we currently have designated for calcium chloride. Again, as I mentioned during for our operations and the teamwork aspect is we don't have a very large organization. So we use all 12 of our staff are required as part of their position to plow. There's no opting out unless there's a specific reason, you know, if someone's daughter's getting married or granddaughter's baptism and things like that, that is something that I'll approve to allow someone off. But just merely saying I don't want to is not an option. We oftentimes will take between 1 and 3 water department employees. In our public works department, we do have our own water utility. And in that department, although they're in the water utility, they are part of our public works department. And when needed, are expected to participate in plowing operations. Our engineering department, again, falling under public works, we do take one of our engineer staff that is a non-CDL operator. They typically are one of them that do our alleys with the tool cat, not requiring a CDL, or they'll be part of our parking lot clearing, again, without the CDL. And then one of the probably our more important staff are our 3 admin staff. They're here during business hours. And as you all can attest to, not everybody is satisfied or pleased with plowing. So they take a lot of phone calls up front and trying to provide the answers and explanations as to when and what we're doing. During our COVID years, the last couple of years, there was an opportunity to, obviously people were out on the various extended COVID leaves back in the beginning. The director of public works, myself, we both have CDLs. The director actually plowed one night with the crews when I was out on a COVID quarantine. And then there's been a number of times like last year where I plowed a number of times during a plow event because of whether it be COVID, sickness, one of the excused absences, to make sure that everybody, you know, we just can't let a truck sit. I mean, we have that obligation to the community, and we'll just jump on the truck and do the best we can. Again, we're not professionals, so I mean, obviously we're not probably doing it as well as the others, but we're out there giving a hand and trying to do the best we can. We view snow as an emergency. So our street team, even though they have other core operations such as garbage and recycling, we do not quit plowing at a specific time just so we can go get garbage. We will plow the entire city if it's depending on the timing, if it runs into 9 a.m. before we're done, everybody plows till then, and then we'll assign the trucks at that point for garbage. If we have to work late for garbage and recycling, so be it. But our core responsibility at that point is public safety. We make sure that the streets are plowed before any other core services is handled, unless we have a sewer backup or whatnot. One of the tough things that, as everybody, it doesn't matter what part of the state or what part of the country you're in, is managing realistic and unrealistic expectations. And it's very easy for individuals I've seen that can judge what other places are doing when they don't completely understand what's happening, taking phone calls and questioning, whether it's a snow related thing or a different call. They don't just really know, or unfortunately with social media, back in the day when I was a kid, if my street didn't get plowed or I felt my street got plowed last, I wasn't out telling anybody for everybody and their brother to hear about. That was just something I dealt with. Now, if something is not up to the level of standard that they believe, social media is hit up and then everybody else is piping in and it may not even be very accurate, but everybody's venting, keyboard warriors. We have to try and manage that. One of the ways that we try to do that is we have a communication specialist that's works for the city. They do a fantastic job. He does a fantastic job with our social media, YouTube, variety of different programs to get the message out. We have a mayor that does a Mayor's Corner YouTube thing where he will meet with individual departments, and whether it's department heads or other staff, and basically sell the story. And they've done one with street department. They've done it with my sign shop staff, how a street sign's made. They've done it with police department, fire, economic development, wherever it may be. But a way to try and sell your story and get people to understand a little bit that trust the staff that you have. We are all trying to do our best in the best management practice with the efficiencies and the financial commitments, and that we're not all just going rogue trying to make life miserable, to trust what we're doing and trying to do it the best we can. And then like our social media aspects of trying to put out there on that monthly basis of a did you know type segment in the winter, did you know why we anti-ice? It's not because we're trying to rust your car out. I mean, there are reasons behind it. And then we've learned too that putting in segments of pictures to help sell the story, and I think it's a few slides up, but I think people buy into the picture grabbing more so than the words. So if we can throw out the why we anti-ice, but then give a reason or a picture behind it, and that would be something like this, where giving an example in real world that somebody may be able to understand, because we've all probably fried eggs like both the left and the right, and that the real reason why we're anti-icing is to prevent the bond, to keep the bond from forming and be able to plow off, more so than rusting out a person's car. So getting that message out there in a way that can be received will hopefully help manage that expectation. Another thing that we had is we do get people that will challenge. We have a 3-inch policy here in the city. It's not, I shouldn't even really necessarily call it a policy as it is so much of a guideline. There are times where we may plow at 2.5 inches because it's going to be very wet and we're going to have a cold snap behind and we don't want to rot and freeze down. Or we may not even plow until 4 inches because the weather doesn't warrant it and it's going to be 50 degrees tomorrow and things like that. So it's more of a guideline, but we have a 3-inch policy, and sometimes we have to review that every year. Just 2 years ago, we went back to the Board of Public Works after a constituent spoke to an alder that wanted us to plow every time we got an inch in the residence. So it's a matter of, explaining why we shouldn't do that, or why we couldn't do that, or what extra costs if they choose to go to that, putting all the eggs in the one basket and let the Board of Public Works decide at what level of service do they want us to maintain. And ultimately, all said and done, we end up staying with the 3-inch level because that was the best management practice that we felt for our community and what we can attain cost-wise, staff-wise, and what we should expect here in the Midwest and in the winter months. We know we can't drive like July and January, and people have to expect that and use due regard. Another thing that we do here is last year, every year I invite alders, mayor, whoever, elected official wise to ride along. Last year we had 2 alders in the mayor ride. This is one of our alder persons riding with a staff member. This might have been 2 years ago because it was the COVID time and masks. But having her ride along and not really knowing what we do, but that couple hours of riding with staff and seeing it firsthand, she gained a whole new appreciation to it. She developed a relationship with Brandon, who was driving the plow. She actually brought him in a present that for him to book on snow plowing that he could read to his kids, that she used to read to the kids. They created a bond, but yet got a chance to have that open dialogue with the drivers and explaining why and what they do, what things make their jobs easier, what things make them more challenging, parking, whatever it may be, that being able to get that message from staff, as well as, that way this alder can make the determination between constituent and staff and what makes the most sense. So that really helped us along. Our mayor rode, it was supposed to be a couple hours. He rode the whole night because he thought it was so cool, which is great because it's always great to have your elected officials on your side. The message with this slide, and one of the things, and I mentioned about the communication specialists, is that we here in Northeast Wisconsin, we have a pretty large media, between the various local media stations. And some people or some organizations or some departments really don't want to speak to them, but our perspective is I would rather give you the message I want you to portray on the media than to have them create their own narrative. So while we're all being challenged to do more with less, if someone from channel 2 or 5, 11, 26, whatever calls and wants to talk, if I can do it or another person can do it, we would much rather do that and sell the message that we want to sell versus them making up a narrative. And again, our communication specialist does a great job of being out taking drone footage or still photos or videos to put on social media or on our own little website segments that definitely help sell the message. Going into the winter months, and probably many departments do this, but the dry runs and inspections are important. We have staff that may be running the same routes year after year, and some of them may be moving to a new route because of one reason or another, or a change of equipment. Having them dry run, and we just completed our dry runs about 2 weeks ago. And the big thing is for them not only to look for high manholes and things that we can still fix this fall, was for reporting back the cones and barricades that may be out in the road, because oftentimes I've seen it in my career that cones get placed, barricades get placed, and 3 months later they're still out there and we're really haven't completed the project. But by being able to inspect and report back that, hey, at such intersection, I can communicate with engineering or ourselves to make sure that whatever repair or whatever reason it was there is being addressed so that it can be completed before winter, or get on a contractor list or our list or whatever it may be. So it's important to make sure that the problems are being resolved during our construction times. When we go into a winter month, and we probably will be doing this within the next month prior to winter, every driver is responsible for their own truck as far as pre and post trip inspections, but I also will assign one person to take as much time as whatever will be necessary. But this is the numbers of our equipment. That one person's required to go through each of our trucks, everything from tires and fuel to wipers and heaters, to make sure everything works, so that if it doesn't work, it's not being brought up in the middle of a plow operation, it's being brought up prior to. I use the same person to do it in the beginning is because I have accountability to that one person to say, hey, you check this off. I'm going to expect that it's done. But if there is an issue, I can go back to that one person I know who did it for that year. Now, once that's done, every event, every day, the pre and post trip's the responsibility of our staff member. But having this up front, I can feel comfortable going into the winter knowing that the equipment has been gone through, everything has been checked off, I have the document proving it, I trust staff did appropriately, and we're good to go. One of the things that we've incorporated, and this year we had 2 retirements, we don't have a lot of turnover here. So we've had very talented staff, but all of a sudden now we're bringing in staff who are very talented but have minimal experience in snow plowing. We created, fabricated, and installed some large caster wheels to our plow and wings on one of our trucks to be able to go out in September and get some seat time with a plow and truck. Now, it's not the same conditions, but some of our staff had limited plow and wing time. Getting into a subdivision that has cul-de-sac or a dead end, we were able to put out garbage cans, that delineator with a flag on it's kind of a mimic of a mailbox, and allow the driver to get through, get a feel of all the weight in front of them, off to the side, how close they are to a curb. They would go around a particular item, stop, get out, see how close they are to something, and gauge that in the truck seat versus standing out looking. The driver is with somebody who's seasoned veteran and they've been rotating through, so you get different perspectives from different people. But they're also giving tips as they get into these cul-de-sacs, how to plow the cul-de-sac. And everybody probably has a different way, but getting the tips so that when they go into it, they're going to have some ideas in the back of their head. So this has been valuable for us. I do have a little video. It didn't show a whole lot, but having a chance to see, you'll see when the wing curb shoe hits the curb, a little puff of smoke, but it's good to feel the curb and get an idea of where they are, and putting that driver at ease a little bit, that, you know, the first time they plow is not the first time they're in the truck. Our flexibility as far as scheduling. Now, this is something that COVID, as bad as COVID issues were, this was one thing that we felt was a positive. We created a variety of different shifts. The initial goal was to not have anybody coming in the door at the same time or not having everybody in for a roll call at the same time. So currently with 12 staff, I have 4 different start times for a shift. One employee works 4 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. 9 months a year, they're on a street sweeper, but in the winter months, they will be in at 4 o'clock to make sure on straight time now. Our bridge is maintained, our roundabouts are maintained, that if there is any rush hour traffic concerns, they can treat all that themselves. And if they have to call me to have more staff come in because it's snowing at the time, they will. But a lot of these things on our high priority areas, they can treat before traffic picks up at no extra cost to the city. We have a number of people that work 5:30 to 4, Monday through Thursday. A couple that work 4 9s and a 4, which is 6 a.m. to 3:30, and then a half day on Friday. And then one that works 6:30 to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, primarily for childcare purposes. But what that does is it gives us a lot of extra straight time coverage for the city. Basically, from Monday to Thursday, we have 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then 4 to 3 on Fridays. So we gain a lot of coverage if an emergency came out, albeit not complete full staff, but 1 or 2 people typically at any given time for sure are here during those times that can help address certain concerns. One of the things though with that, everyone on the department is aware that that can be altered at any time for the community needs. So during a brush week or an overflow bulk week or whatever it may be, I may with advance notice say, hey, next week we're all working X shift to get this done. And there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's just that's what we're working, and everybody bought in. And then the next week they go right back to their normal stuff. So it really works well for them. Those shifts were what they picked, the 410s, the 4 9s, and a 4. And we accommodated as much as we can, to benefit the employee, but it has to benefit the city. The minute we don't get the benefit from the city, we'll go back to something else. But right now it's been a great win-win for everybody. So that has worked well for us. During a snowplow event, at 4 a.m., if we're all in, one person that's in on the regular time may not get overtime while the rest do, or vice versa. But that's what they signed up for when they chose that shift. And again, when we go into the full operation, it's roughly 16 units. We'll have 13 on trucks, loaders, or a grader. And then we have the 3 other units that are on our large John Deere tractor with a pusher, some tool cats, or a 1-ton. And then we start our operations out in tandem or triple tandem as a way to be able to take out those 4 lanes plus parking lanes and whatnot all in one swipe. That has been a lot more efficient than just having one truck go back and forth. So everybody in their truck has the assignments based on their truck number, and it's written up what they have, what routes they go, what streets. And then once they're done with that, they break off and continue. So the nice thing with this on a main street or a Broadway where we have turn lanes or parking lanes, we're taking everything in one swat, and 80% of our traffic volume are on these primaries that we've designated as our plowing primaries. So we really can kind of open up to make sure that everything in those areas aren't getting all driven back on, slop back over in a mess. We have our city, like I said, broken up into the 13 plow routes. Each route has designation of the red coloring are our true residential streets. The green ones are the routes that the roads that we've designated as a primary. Primaries aren't necessarily always the highest volume traffic routes, but they may be cut throughs. Like you may see on some of these, it's a cut through route. And with that, we feel if we clear it, we're going to better serve the community. One of the other things that we've recognized is that in any given place of the city, 3 blocks in any direction should get you to a main street that will be plowed and treated prior to a full city plow. So a lot easier to articulate to residents that 3 blocks in any direction, albeit those 3 blocks might be through 4 inches of snow if we haven't plowed yet, but we'll get them to something that's been treated. We take into account a number of things going into a plow event, or even a spreading event, depending on the time of day. If it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, we're going to make sure that we hit around the schools first, or any special event things that we may have going on, construction projects, or whatever could potentially be that thing to do. But if it's midnight, we may not concern as much on schools until later in the day. Sundays, we're going to obviously treat churches, areas first. as we go through our routes, or focus on those because we know that they're going to get parked in or traveled. So staff recognizing some of those areas and taking it upon themselves of knowing where their schools are, or where their churches are, other special events in their area that they need to take care of first. One of the things that we also do is all of our mains, the green, will get, if we came in for a spreading operation, is they'll get plowed and curb to curb and salt treated as deemed necessary. But we also, before we pull out of there, we will run each of our residential routes, and salt treat intersections. It's not a lot. It's not on a blast or anything, but we're about 100 feet, maybe one city lot length, to do these stop sign approaches. And one of the things that we've learned by that, or we feel by that, is that having that area approaching the stop sign clear or clearer, allowing for people to stop safely, minimizes a lot of complaints about people not being able to stop or start. And that way, if we're approaching the stop sign coming up to even a main, cars coming onto the road are tracking from the main. So both that area coming up to that approach typically is pretty clear, especially if it's a sunny day, even if it's cool. And it definitely helps with complaints being reduced. Minimum amount of salt, minimum impact, but definitely high return. Again, some examples of some of our plow routes in various parts of the city. Some are narrower with alleys, some are a little bit wider streets, with the older neighborhoods, being much narrower streets, and then the other places being a little bit wider with some cul-de-sacs. One of the things that is important to do is like preseason discussions, having a winter team meeting. We have drafted up, from kind of last year. I sit with our lead person and go through a number of things, and then we'll have our meeting coming up here in about 2 weeks. But as preseason discussion, we'll talk about salting plans and getting the expectation of setting at whether, when I call staff in saying, hey, set at this or this or this, staff has full authority to adjust their salt applications based upon conditions, but they have bought into the fact that we aren't going to go in and apply at 800 tons a lane mile, or I'm sorry, 800 pounds a lane mile. We're going to do the best we can to reduce the impacts of the environment, cost, and supply. So they've bought in, and it's just a matter of getting them set with the plan of what we want to do. Same with our plowing plans of who's plowing where, who's working in tandem together, and then any after action reviews. And our after action reviews sometimes are very brief as to, hey, what went well, and sometimes they'll say, hey, I thought everything went well, nothing to work on. The next meeting, maybe this didn't work or that didn't work, and how can we improve? Some things may take longer to improve than others, but having that discussion with those that physically do the work and taking that that information as valued is very important. So having those meetings is huge and helps us get better. One of the things that, these are a picture of our 2 brine tanks and calcium tank and cleaning out the sediments. One of the things that we learned, I came here a few years ago, and the tanks had never been cleaned, and there's a lot of sediment in the bottom, and the staff kept saying that the filters on their brine trucks were plugging up really fast, and they were getting frustrated. Taking our Vector out and managing to clean out the tanks has really reduced the sediment volume in the tanks, and it's reduced the filter plugs, which has in turn got staff a bigger buy-in. They're bought into using the liquid because they're not having as many problems with it. So making sure cleaning this, and we typically do this every spring when we're into the season, sometime in that May, June, when we know we're done and we can fit it in, is to get in and take the morning to just suck out whatever's in there the best we can to make sure that we stay on top of our equipment. When we talked about team building or the team aspect previously, one of the things that we do is I meet with the police department yearly and discuss a few different things. They have turnaround in their department. They have turnaround in the dispatch center, but wanting to make them aware of what our points of contact are, who should they call if they have an issue, what jurisdictional responsibilities. Obviously, in our community, we have some county highways that run through that we aren't responsible for maintaining, and the county does. So if they're going to call, if it's an extreme safety situation, we'll go take care of it. But if it's something that I should be contacting the county, or they should be contacting, they know what streets and who to call. Explaining a little bit on staffing periods and anti-icing and storm progressions. A lot of those things that we cover just to get them on base with what we're doing and that I can understand what they're doing, and we can have that team effort of making sure that we're working with each other, not against each other. Every snow event, and this is an example I just cut and pasted from an email from back in January 6, 22. Every time we have a weather event, whether it's going to be just a potential spreading operation or we're going to have a full plow event, is I send an email that goes to our admin staff up front so that they're aware of what we're doing. The police department, both the chief and the captains, as well as the sergeants. So everybody in the command staff of the police department gets the email. The fire department and both the chief and the assistant chief, and they can share with whatever battalion chief that they want, and our city administrator, so that everybody's aware of what our plans are. Big thing with this is I feel and found out that if the police department knows what we're doing, they may not call at 2 a.m. that the road's slippery if they know at 4 a.m. somebody's going to be in to treat something, especially in our community that's not very heavily traveled at 2 a.m. in February. We may get by. So they may minimize a call, minimize having to come in for something that really could have waited 2 more hours. So if they know what we're planning, it's definitely helped us. I've gotten minimal calls during these events. They're all aware that if there is something that can't wait, absolutely call. But just getting the idea of what we're doing has definitely had that team atmosphere where they know what we're doing. I know what they're doing. If they do call, I know it's important that we're going to have to come in and take care of it. So sending that email has been a huge asset for us. And it helps the office staff when they start getting calls as well, and they can explain what we're doing and when we're plowing and whatnot. Again, with the police department, after an event, and I don't do this every single time, but a number of times I will reach out to, and this one was from November of 21, I'll reach out to them and ask them if they can send me any crash reports that they had from X time to X time within the city. And I can use that to gauge kind of how we did. Some of it's just drivers that aren't driving with due regard. Some of it, it's just could be inattentive or whatnot, but I can kind of get a feel of what the road conditions were. On this one, there's a number of crashes, and as I look at it, I can say a number of them are private property, Menards, De Pere High School, West De Pere High School, and then I can look at, well, Grant Street's a county maintained, Lost Dauphin and Insuring's county maintained, at that intersection, 41's county maintained, and not blaming county for any of this, but I can look and kind of say, hey, we don't maintain that, so that one really doesn't count against us, and that one we don't maintain. But kind of getting a feel of how we did in our city maintain streets, of having the crash report kind of in front of us. And I can also use it then to say, hey, most of our crashes were in the southwest part of the city where we had wind. Maybe we got to do something different there, or we had this, or we had that. Using that to see where the problems are has definitely helped us with our planning, and just getting this data collection has helped us gauge how well we've done. One of the things coming here is the challenge to improve. Our director is constantly, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 5,000 times, where he says, we're pretty darn good, we're pretty darn efficient, but we can always get better. His mindset is that he always is pushing to think outside the box, think at new equipment, think at ways to do it, get better, and never be satisfied with the status quo. He's very, very proactive that way. And I never have to doubt and question where he stands, because I always know he's going to say you can get better. So that in turn, I attended a lot of conferences, these webinars. At the conferences, I'm looking at equipment and methods, listening to different manners of what we're doing things, and coming up with innovative measures. It's an easy sell. In the 23 budget, we're requesting a new truck with a different type of spreader that we can both spray, in the shake and bake method, where we'll be able to apply rock salt and with the spray bar at the same time, so we can hopefully minimize rock salt while applying liquid at a high level, not just pre-wet. And it went through, the question, explain why, and so far it's made it through the budget to the final day of the final hearing. So he's very bought in, and that's good, because we know where we stand and what he wants. And our community is that same way, where they expect that high service. We're not going to satisfy with anything less. So we want to make sure that we're providing that level. And that's really kind of all I got. I'm hoping that there's questions that we can throw out there that we can both get better from, or try and answer for you. Allison?
All right. Thank you so much, Tony. That was awesome. Yeah, I learned a lot here. I love, really love the communication that you have kind of throughout the city when you're talking about emailing fire department, police department, the administrative staff, like making sure everybody understands kind of what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then those ride-alongs, I do agree with you. The idea that we want to get the message out to the media, right? So they can share the message that we want, right?
Right.
And not try to like backpedal kind of after not the right message goes out. So definitely would encourage, other municipalities to do that, media as well as, you're getting your alders and mayors out. It's so cool that the mayor stayed in the truck overnight.
Yeah.
So right now I didn't see any questions come in. If people have a minute to put that either into the chat, or like I said, I'll try to go back and forth here and see if any come in via my Gmail, which is wisaltwise@gmail.com. So if you have any questions for Tony, please do put those in there. Otherwise, I know Tony, we can probably get your email out to people too if they have questions kind of down the road. But let me just kind of double check the two kind of places here with the live stream. So, and I do know that there was a little bit of confusion maybe about the time. I had initially set this for 11 a.m. because we were going to run it at 11 a.m. last week. So my apologies if people were trying to get on then, and hopefully I know we've got a handful of people that were able to join us live, and hopefully some more a little later on. So I don't see any questions right now, Tony. And so I think maybe we can just kind of follow up later on if there are any. But I thank you for this. I think it's some really great material to have out there and just kind of keep these conversations going.
Sounds good.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet. No problem. Bye.
Bye.